Thank you all for stopping your visit at the fair and for joining us on this session concerning consumers' expectations concerning food safety and its correlation, traceability. Actually, you know that it's a very trendy topic as one a candidate for the presidential election has mentioned the fight of genetically modified elements as a main spot of his campaign. But we're not here for politics, so I'm here to welcome Béatrice de Reynal. Béatrice, hello, and thank you for being here. Yes, of course, you can give her her hand. And thank you for launching these applauses. Béatrice, you founded the Nutri Marketing Consultancy, specialized in consumer and retail study. In fact, we are specialized in food innovation and marketing, and of course, nutrition, because nutrition is my disease. It's a way of speaking. But, you know, you can get cured. Yes, of course, you can cure it. So you'll show us with a study that if in France, this is one country in the world where food is the healthier and safer, is the healthiest and safest, that doesn't mean that consumers are convinced of it. Well, thank you. We're here to talk about consumers' risk. Here, us with challenging food marketing, we're here to know consumers and try and understand consumers' concerns. This is what you call the needs or the expectations of consumers. And this is all influenced by the level of risk perception and the level of fear. And the way consumers perceive risks is a bit baroque. I'll give you just a few elements for the context before we introduce. I introduce the experts that we have invited and who will discuss with Olivier. In terms of context, here's a line of the milestones, events concerning media and health and sometimes medical events. You see that there was the mad cow, the avian flu. So it's as if our life was a series of scandals or was affected by a series of scandals. Of course, television media enables information to travel fast, which wasn't the case 30 to 40 to 50 years ago. But as food is coming from around the planet, it multiplies the risks coming from outside. But we also have a lot at home. Don't worry, because actually the most dangerous risks are the ones at home. So the last ones are lasagna with horse meat and stuff like that. So the survey carried out was what are the main concerns, factors for industrial products. Like preservatives were a part of the concern, and actually in tins, people think that there's preservatives when there's none. And concerning food crisis, we French are supposed to be very sensitive to any food crisis, and every time there's a crisis, it demultiplies our fears. Like lasagna with a horse that does moo as if it was a cow, and fish fed with animal flowers. I mean, all this. And that leads 79% of the French who think that it's possible that the food that they eat are bad for their health. And here we see that France is the second country where quality was assessed, though we're at the top concerning the health, the sanitary quality. But nevertheless, the French are really never worried as much concerning the quality of their food. So this is the French specificity. We're afraid of the food safety heaven to fall on our head. So how can I get back how can I change that? Anya did a survey some time ago, and they asked whether people trusted labels. And the French answered, actually over 1 out of 2 French didn't trust what was said on the labels. So I translate, a half of this room thinks that what is said on the labels is not true. So that's not a very good score, is it? No, the image of industrial products has gone down. We need some more transparency. We need more teaching, and we also need simpler things. Nowadays, things go faster. Information means are more sophisticated. Therefore, we may have computer systems that can enable us to know in real time what we are going to food, and this may be a solution for greater transparency. Another way of transparency, localism. The milk comes from the next door farm, so it's necessarily good because the next door farm, as it is next door, is pure and clean because it's next door. And I heard somebody who said, well, my grandmother did it, so it's organic. Well, no, your grandmother may not do it organically, and she may live next to a nuclear plant that you don't see anymore. So because, so there's a confusion between places being nearby and places being organic. Then some categories do try to make quality products, like either Lu or Saint Michel. They try and do something good, controllable, and they try and source locally. Anything that's local is very well appreciated by the French. Therefore, there's more logo like this, Bravo l'Auvergne, so hurrah for Auvergne, or any other French region. But abroad, like China, the French label are very much sought, and therefore we'll be able to sell local products, but we will be able to sell them internationally. The handcraft is also very well considered. Of course, handcraft is the word handcraft is protected legally. And if we look at the different labels, we find it very interesting. There's the red label, organic or ecological agriculture, and we know that the most famous ones are the red label and the AB label, and the less known are the blanc coeur and different labels. For example, elected produce of the year, I think it's pretty famous. And the best understood labels, not known but understood, what they look like. You see that now at AB level, only 85% people understand what it means versus 90% who knew what it was. And then the labels that draw people to buy more. You see that organic products are well off, but not elected product of the year. So I understand, I know what it is, but it doesn't attract me. So having labels is good, but it's not always useful. So we have to really study it in depth. As a conclusion, it is true that France is especially affected by food fears, and this is fed by media because the media want to sell papers and they need therefore to make more scandalous information. And there's also a lack of transparency among retailers because they don't always want to say everything. Sometimes there's of course professional secret, but then they fear that something is not going to be well perceived. And nowadays you ask kindergarten kids, they won't even know how to you make sugar. I see here, even some of you may not know how you make butter. I see that not everyone here knows how to make butter. And then there's a strong expectation for greater transparency, ethics, and sincerity. Some monks came from the abbey with their product, and everybody's interested in them because it may, they say that they made it in the abbey, and so people are interested. So people look for meaning too. And then the traceability, these are technical, technical aspects that enable us to give good products. Thank you for your attention. If you want any information, you may ask for it on the internet. You see it here, and I think you'll find it on the website of the fair in some time. And then I'll hand the floor back to Olivier, and apart from thanking you for your attention. Thank you, Béatrice. Yes, please, an applause for her. Don't be shy. Oh, God, I have so many fans. But please don't, I can't let you say that journalists always attract scandal. No. The other thing, I see a lot of people outside. Please come and sit down. And, once you come here, you can also leave freely. And don't worry, journalists don't bite, at least not all the time. And Beatrice, thank you very much. We've seen that there were many labels, and it's not so clear. I mean, AB, okay, fine, we know what it is. Well, there's many labels. I think it's good to have many labels, but you have to understand that they're not all understood, and they don't always motivate to buy. I mean, it's good to have a label, but then it has to motivate people to buy. Then it takes time to set up a label, because the red label, is not too young. And then year of the produce of the year, that's newer. But and it has to be understood by people. And let me try to be more scandalous and also more commercial, of course. So, Béatrice, thank you again for this introduction. And now I will call Mrs. Claire MAESTROJUAN. Mr. Cédric LECOLLEY, please join us. And Mr. Vincent BOURDIL.
D'accord. Okay, merci. Allez-vous. Alors, il y a des micros. Alors là, on ne me voit pas.
Please take a seat. Take the mics. Let me introduce you first. I think. Now, if we start with you, Vincent BOURDIL. I'm sorry. I got it wrong. So, I'm sorry, Bruno. So, you're IFS technical manager, that's right? So, IFS is an audit referential for agri-food industrials. First of all, it was a retailer's brands, but now not only. When was your IFS reference? 2003, 13 years ago. So it's one of the main references worldwide. There's others. We're not going to advertise for competitors, but there's others. Claire Estrojean, hello. Thank you for being here. Hi. You're project manager at VIF. VIF is a French publisher specialized in agri-food, and you'll have the opportunity to tell us more about the initiatives of your business concerning traceability. Cédric LECOLLEY, hello. Hello. Thank you for being here too. You are marketing and sales manager from GS1 France. It is a body that standard and certification product, and the so famous barcode that celebrated its 40th birthday some days ago, and the barcode is such a useful product. Vincent BOURDIL, hello. I'm not mistaken this time, right? Your title is a bit complicated. You're food storage president. Well, I'm in charge of the food business for Bureau VERITAS. Bureau VERITAS, everybody knows it, but I'll remind everyone of the fact that it is a business company specialized in audit for industry and especially and also food industry to make sure that they comply with all rules. Yeah, is that it? Yes, I couldn't have said it better. So as you have the mic, maybe you can answer the first question. Now, traceability is a bit of a difficult term, but consumers think associated to food safety. It is not a matter of safety. We just know where products are, but we don't really know how they are. So Is it still true that safety really concerns consumers today? Béatrice said so, but you think that this is what they expect, not to fear? Yes, it's true. We see it among our customers who belong to the whole supply chain, the food supply chain, the food industry supply chain, and they want to develop answers for their customers who, in the end, are consumers. So I'd say that the industry, retailers, producers want to guarantee the end consumer healthy and reliable products. When traceability means the history of the product. Now, food safety is a different thing. It has to do with the intrinsic quality of the product or its capacity or its availability to damage health because of chemical or other types of contamination. So both are linked because they refer to transparency and trust. You may have a very high-performing traceability system and nevertheless have a food crisis in your production chain. Well, but traceability allows you to take products out of the market faster, to localize them. Yes, thanks to this gentleman's technologies, for instance. Yes. Bruno, another question. You do regular audits in industries. Is food safety an expectation? I know that the zero risk doesn't exist, but can you approach it? Well, actually, I just like to correct you. I don't do audits, but yes, but you're just you're a reference for audits. Yeah, Bureau Veritas is in charge of the audits. Yes, we are not in direct contact with, in touch with consumers, but as Béatrice reminded us of it, all food crises that affect consumers because of the media, when they find it in the media, all this draws consumers to to seek more information to be able to buy better. So in your referentials, you have more information demands. Yes, we do it with the different players of the food chain, industrials, retailers, and certification bodies too. And so they let us know about all these expectations, and we include them in our references. Actually, like when we talk about, for example, the horse meat, well, it's a fraud, and it's a food fraud, and it's existed, and it will still exist. Now, what are new expectations? We've mentioned food safety. Of course, consumers are really concerned with food safety, and they demand more transparency. But we also hear more and more the origin of the product being mentioned. We even sometimes see now the picture of the producer, of the milk producer, for example, on the milk pack. Are these expectations that you observe, and does it generate more and more data to be processed? Well, today, our clients strongly ask for very specific indications on our package. They want to know, they want to be able to localize not just the town where the produce was produced, but the farmer who produced the raw material. And today, consumers also would like to know how the produce was processed. That's why we saw cameras being introduced in slaughterhouses. And so we've said it for years. The raw material is respected, and this shows in the end product. So we do receive claims to show the producer on the label, or the name of the producer on the label. It's not so new. Some labels were compulsory, of course, concerning meat or dairy products. But nowadays, the labels described who the processor was. Now they want to know who the producer is, not just the processor. So we go further up in the chain, in the supply chain, and it's actually a story that we need to tell the consumer, a nice story, preferably. Yes, preferably. Cédric, same question. Same thing here. You see claims to know the origin of the product. We don't just want to know that the beef, it comes from the Charolais region. We actually want to know who the Charolais producer is. Actually, the crisis we're in, as Béatrice underlined it, the consumers want safety because there's a lack of trust in everything they eat and everything that's on the market. And for that, we see like the Volkswagen's case, which was a treasure. It was seen as a treasure by consumers. So now consumers want authenticity. They want stories, true stories, live stories. As soon as you link produce with a consumer or with a farm, this brings life back to the product that we consume. And today, this is what happens, we partnered with a cooperative, and we've seen a new philosophy come out of a new agriculture. We're able to produce less with a greater quality. So we need to gain trust back, the consumers' trust back. But as Béatrice said, the fact that it's close by doesn't mean that it's healthy. You may have a nuclear plant right next door. So if your grandmother makes a nice marmalade with fruits from our gardens, but she has a nuclear plant right next door, it won't be too good, won't it? Yes, the thing is, the produce that we make or that the grandmother makes, I believe in it because it's my grandma. The brand that has made it, I believe it, and I just need to be reassured. I need a good evidence because it will reassure me. Because knowing everything, the fact that a nuclear plant has polluted waters 10 kilometers away from that, then it's infinite transparency, and we will never be able to solve that. I mean, we need to say the truth and to dose what we say. Well, and this expectation for information concerning the origin, the local origin, does that mean the consumers want more quality, or does that mean that they're militant, that they want local produce to defend local producers? Well, nowadays, from what industrials tell us, it seems like consumers need to understand what they buy. And all that was said on the label was not necessarily understandable by the consumers. So now, the fact that they look for details means that this way they will understand. Health allegations didn't really make sense. But today, on the map of France, if you tell us where the producer comes from, then you know where the producer is, and then the customer starts understanding, feels like he or she understands. Now, there's several studies that show a new normality in consumption. Before, consumers bought based on price, but now new aspects come up. The well-being at large, the fact that it's good for your health, but also what you said, anything that has to do with knowledge. I want to be told a story, and I want this story to be credible. And I remember one study that says that today 1 out of 2 consumers needs to know where the product comes, and they want this information to be readable, explicit, and easy to understand. That's why there was this new rule to simplify labels. And personally, I believe in the consumer's power in the end, and also the connected world with smartphones. We see that things go very fast, and why do crises accelerate? And you're right, my lady. and it's just not just internet. Citizens themselves share information, accelerate it, and our clients, industrials, sometimes are a bit late with regards to their customers. That's why they want to be equipped. Now, you mentioned the ANCO rule. Public authorities add to consumers' expectation more claims to have more information. There was the whole traceability of origins, allergenics, and we are told that there could be more things concerning milk in dairy products. So all these information claims add up between consumers and public authorities. So how do you how to manage traceability? Because you have to manage all this data. Claire, I see that you're nodding. So how do you do to manage data for your ORP? The rule has two aspects. It brought something new, but it also erased other things to make the reading simpler. For our clients in the industry, which are industrials, they had to invest in software, PIM-type software, to manage the product information and to be able to exchange this information with retailers. Also, they invested in labelings. So industrials had to invest in machines and label softwares, also to increase the size of labels. And also they worked on their produce catalogs. So they made quite good investments throughout time. Yes, and I'd like to get back to ARCO. This came out by December 2014, and it stressed the whole sector because it was aiming at showing the same degree of information on the internet as you find on your label. So all industrials with retailers had to learn how to share this information so that the retailer who is in the end in touch with the end customer to give the right information. And that's why I'm talking about the allergenics, because there was something critical, information on allergenics.
First of all, about the information produced and the solutions to structure this information and share it with inside of all this, the whole thing about standards which have to be organized. And this is like a driving force in the modernization of the profession in its ability to share, to produce and share its data. And today we need to communicate right up to the menus of the restaurants. We need to put a certain amount of information in there. We're not really up to it. And have you felt today that the challenges of traceability still concern the raw materials or the data linked to transport or storage of these raw materials? I'd just like to add some additional information. I think that it's linked to the product content, the ingredients, the storage has less impact than what is actually contained in the product at the moment when it's at the time when it's manufactured. And we've become more responsible about what's on the label, but what's really important is the reliability of the information on the label and how this composition of the product, the recipe of the product has been done, and how can the label be proved to be reliable. And in different companies, difference between there's a distance between the people that are going to produce the labels, maybe the marketing, the food, the regulations department, who will make the choices for the company respecting the regulations. And then there's a gap between that and on a daily basis. There's the plant which will receive the raw materials, the ingredients and the packaging. that we're going to make their product from this, but there will not necessarily be all the information about this on the label. So when we talk about the data, product-related data, there's this question of reliability. There's three potential issues. First of all, we can make a mistake. The IT system can communicate wrong information about the product, or there can be deliberate deliberate act of communicating the wrong information, which is like fraud. We talked about horse meat just now, which was an example. And then there can be external attacks. We talk about cyber criminals, and that can also be at work in the food industry. So what would be the main risk? What's the main risk? Are they involuntary mistakes, non-deliberate mistakes, or is it deliberate attacks from internally, or is it external? IT doesn't make mistakes. It's the person who uses the IT that makes mistakes. Okay, maybe a bug? Yeah, there can be bugs. It's the data. So people who have computers know that there are bugs sometimes. It's the data that can be mistaken, that can be erroneous, and that's entered by a person. But the main risk today is the person who's behind the computer. It's okay, it's always the person that's the guilty party. Today, at VIF, the big work on data reliability and this question of cyber attacks is to describe our products to avoid this vulnerability that we could have in an ecosystem with regard to piracy or whatever. And this is we have to invest on the one side in the software when we design it, but also today we need to join up the services of one company specialized in testing on vulnerability, system vulnerability. We need to involve them when we install the software in our customers' premises, and the place also where the solutions are hosted, because we use the cloud a lot. We need to work on this because there can be a problem with internet connection. We need to have a place where the services continuity is guaranteed, but also there's a certain amount of safety against attacks, and it's all these stages, all these bricks in the process that allow us to make the chain less sensitive or vulnerable to this type of impact from cyber attacks. Do you think that the chain is vulnerable, speaking honestly today? The food industry chain, when we see the elections in the States, we're able... No, I'm just joking. It's a risk, but today we're not going to be food defense oriented, but when you attack a certain population, food is a very sensitive network, because it's very quick broadcast of distribution with major impact. Are the systems fairly well protected, or generally are they solid and armed? I think that we're still looking to improve, because the techniques of cyber attacks are getting more sophisticated and the attackers are improving their strategies. So yes, Cédric, I'd just like to react to what my two neighbours said just now, which is that information produced becomes of major importance, because that's what's going to structure your discussions with your partners. And all is data, everything's like fluid. It flows. Everything is a flow of products and flow of information, and this is very important. It's of colossal importance in the companies. The information exists at several places within the company, and we absolutely need to create within the industries a kind of direction or management of data. And a lot of industries, such as the pharmaceutical industry, I've got a lot of regulations, and the data manager, it could be like the central door of the data, able to list it internally and then send it out to the partners through solution offers such as VIF and such as Claire. And this is very important, to have this capacity to manufacture it properly, and this idea of quality, and there's training issues, very important, and also IT systems and partners are important. And the standards help you to, through good structure, to maximize quality. Because if information is good information and bad quality, product quality will remain a bad quality, and it's very important for all of the companies. Yes, I can see you, Vincent. I can see you smiling. What Cédric said about standards. No, I've got no problems with standards. Yeah, okay, I realise that. What you're trying to say, maybe you're talking about safety, it's the same for any company that's going to manage any type of data. You've always got problems with safety, or servers, hosting standards, etc. The standards that you were talking about that we certify, obviously. But as Claire said, in the food industry, there is this risk that there's this problem of health. It can be spread very quickly. Okay. And this subject of traceability, which is the theme of the round table, is simple. You've got information in a silo system in different stakeholders. You've got a value chain, and in general, the informations that circulate. And more today, we make bridges across to follow a product along a value chain between the production, the consumer, with there'll be 7 or 8 stages in this chain, and we need to follow these stages, 7 or 8 stages. We need to find the common language. That's the first problem that you have to resolve. I can see everyone smiling. But over and above that, the more you have theological people who will discuss about the silos, the more you'll have filter risks, and this brings us back to safety issues. And before we get to this stage, we need to get people to speak to each other and get them around the table, and then they can talk about consortiums, branches, because subsidiaries. Because when we have a decider who's a prescriptor, but when you have value chains that are much more complicated, where you have a bargaining power, which means that there's a capacity to influence the decision, which is equally shared between the industrials, the producers, the traders, and the distributors, it's more difficult to impose a standard, which means why you need to have the third party who's you can historically trust. So on the standards, we should maybe take a GSM, somebody we can trust. So the whole issue is to create this common language that everyone speaks English or whatever on this chain, to avoid that traceability is not just to click below or above, but it should be throughout the whole chain. And then the standards with these interconnection issues, the idea is to help this traceability chain to exist from end to end, going up and coming down. And that's what the standards, new generation standards, should produce, which will help us for the whole chain and the actors within the chain to know the whole history that has been followed by this product. What I wanted to add is that, yes, there is this click and bridge aspect and system aspect, but I think there's also the aspect of the awareness, becoming aware of the openness, the necessary openness between the different stakeholders. Because, yeah, when you have food crises with the people involved in safety, they're aware. When we've got a crisis, the information comes in, and quickly or lot, everyone feels involved, and they all identify themselves as an actor within this chain. But we have to create this same reaction when there's no crisis, so that if there is a crisis, we can improve this relaying of information, that we'll be more quickly aware of what's going on upstream, and that's one of the challenges for the future. Yes, we can see that, as you said, there's some challenges. What are the solutions that exist? Because the objective is to provide answers. And the idea of this roundtable is to give some solutions. So what are the tools, the methodologies that we're developing today to help us make progress in this, to have more trust, wider trust, and more reliable confidence in traceability? We've already talked about it. You're developing a premium audit, premium plus audit. What is it? Just before that, I'd like the type of reference that we're trying to develop, reference standards. We've talked about openness and confidence, trust. This certification is supposed to help the customer to be confident, to trust that things are happening as they're supposed to happen. This openness aspect is what FS is working on. on the recognition by the health authorities from the different countries of these standards, to standard lists, to encourage the users of these standard lists to both be open with an auditor who may come to do an IFS audit, because in the last analysis, this openness will be recognized by the authorities as a guarantee of good faith. And the second aspect that we are working on at the IFS is this pilot project at the moment in Holland, in the Netherlands, is on audits, which we call product integrity audits, which are more orientated vertically, which means that we feed up, we go back up an industry much quicker than we do on a site audit. And in these industry audits, we can audit other sites afterwards, and also we might be led to audit the quality of the information which is available of the industrial. That could be a fish, where a fish comes from, or the nature of a fish, or certification of the supplier. Absence of certain traces in the product. This should be on the label, but how are the means set up by the industry, the industrial producer, to guarantee that everything that is put on the label is right, is correct and true? The question that I'm wondering about, is, yes, with this kind of information, it's only of any use if it can be the basis of a claim for a producer to be able to. I can certify there's none of this product in this chemical product or whatever in this product. Yes, okay, it's the distributor who is enabled to be confident, because he knows that there's IFS certification of the product. But for us, it would be quite dangerous to see our logo on the products. Yesterday, even, I found out that a producer for ice producer for Mojito in the Var region had our two logos on his products. And I like Mojito, but neither Bureau Veritas nor IFS have ever heard about this company who is using the logos. And I think this is a very technical aspect. And the fact that you put certify IFS on a product, no, but you could the industry, the producer could put that on this packaging. I can guarantee that the production chain is certified, without actually going into details. So after now, I'm going to try and be now I'm going to act as a journalist that likes to stir things up. Does this not create suspicion for products that are not able to put this on their packaging for cost reasons? You can't put it on all your products. So this could put doubt in people's minds about the other products. In the case of this integrity audit, which is, yes, a module, a very specific module, which is related but not directly linked to certification, IFS certification. The objective is to have more safety in chains that are more complex than in other situations where the risk is more controlled. And the level depends on the level of risk in the industry concerned. Vincent BOURDIL. Yes, it's true that the risk is not the same for everybody, and it's clear that the more products that have more risk than others, and there's lots of ways of categorizing the risks. There are people who have compiled existing databases about microbiological or physical contamination on hundreds of thousands of samples of audits to try and map the risks by country, by industry, by product, and so to help the industrial producers to choose their suppliers. That's the service that type of service we've developed, and this is fairly innovative because it helps you to reduce the cost of food safety and of trust and of the guarantee and openness, trying to use the cloud and the mass of data which already exists. So instead of saying we're going to audit each person every time, you can see the area where there's a risk and try and accentuate, but highlight where you need to make an effort, where there's a need, a kind of scoring process. Vincent, can you do a demonstration now, please? We hear that's the blockchain I don't know whether everyone knows what it is, the blockchain, but you've heard about it. It's a methodology which theoretically helps to guarantee the integrity of in IT payments transaction. I'm really summing up very briefly. I hope I haven't made too many mistakes. Is the blockchain, which is seen like would it help us with traceability? Yeah, we really believe in it. It's a technology. We talk about blockchain, no one understands. But 20 years ago, if I said a web page or an internet page to you, you wouldn't understand either. It's the same principle because it refers to a whole lot of subjects that we haven't yet understood. But the blockchain is there's a computers, just to be very simple, that will communicate between each other in a network that's not internet, which will exchange in an encrypted manner. And the principle of this network of computers, if I look at Bitcoin, 6,000 computers, it's not really a computer. The computer would be as big as this room, and there's 6,000 like that, and they trust each other. That's the base of the principle. If one of them prints information in the blockchain, it's going to mine a block using a very complex algorithm. It's going to publish its method to the 6,000 others, and the 6,000 will say, OK, and we'll validate it. And this information becomes validated, definitively finalized, and it's dated, it's immuable and will stay there forever, printed by 6,000 computers. So that's technology. How does it work in practice? You've got information that's going to be printed in a network. We call it a ledger, which is going to stay there ad vitam. And this is what we do for several proof of concept. The epoch mode, we're going to have industrial consortium, and they say, yes, okay, we want to develop this we have done it on one complex change with shadowy areas, big shadowy areas. What do you call about shady areas? This are fishing areas in the South Pacific. It's a bit like Vegas, but we don't know more. We can't really audit or inspect every boat. It costs too much. But what I'm saying is that you can have traceability, total traceability. But you'd have to put an inspector behind every single product, but it's not possible. So you need to find ways of automating the transactions to guarantee to each of these stakeholders that it's not just responsible for the cost upstream and downstream, but all the costs. So you need to put the stakeholders around the table. And GSM is one good example, but there are others, and the blockchain is another, which helps you to print this information. It's not using barcodes, but at the end, it's visible for all the actors in the chain. And what's visible is encrypted information and the trace of the information. And you can choose what you enter or not, which means that in theory, you could put order books, inspection reports, invoices, any products, any documents, which will create the trace of of what you want to put or not put in. For example, you want to solve the problem. I want the physical order form because that's the transfer of property. But there's a price on it, and I don't want to share my price, but I want to share my batch number, product code, and other pieces of information. So we're going to be able, with the blockchain, we're going to take a part of the information and print it, and it'll be definitive, and after the other will look and say, okay, this is it. I'm going to put in my information, and it will continue. And he enhances the information. The actors themselves decide. The industrial producers, the traders, and the logistics people, they are part of an actor of this traceability, which helps us to reduce the cost. And we are like architects of the whole, and we come in at certain key points to check that it's the right information. Because once you've validated it, it's there forever. Just a question, do you have any practical applications? Yes, Yeah, there are industries that apply it. We work with a French distributor, very well known, on the food industry, which begins with C, for example. Well, there's two beginning with C. We don't know which one it is. For food and non-food, in general, people try on several subjects, but we also work with non-French producers because we're an international group. And we have a very well-known American distributor which begins with W. So we're still on pilot projects on subjects which are historical problems. For example, in Asia, we might have a few doubts. And then we think that the blockchain technology could be a destructive element, but we're right at the beginning. But we need to have confidence and trust one of the players that will come in. Yes, they need to trust each other. But for that, the technology itself replaces the confidence. So you don't need to have an inspector to come in to inspect each product. They have to come in from time to check, because you've created an enormous mass of data. In the States, for example, you've got 2% of fish stocks that are imported, that are inspected. Only 2% of imported fish that's inspected. That's not a lot. But in the States is a country that invests the most money per ton of fish to inspect them, 4 times more than in France. For this 2%, 10% are rejected. That gives you an idea of the mass of data. If you say tomorrow I'm going to go from 2 to 15 to 20 to 50, 80 to 100% from the mass of data that you've got to handle, and to have a technology of this common language to help you federate these actors with different interests. I just want to agree, which is that the block for GSM it helps to standardize exchanges. It's a good complement to add a safety layer on all the transactions from order to invoicing that we issue, because we need to have the data. We need to be able to identify the people. And it's very complementary, and GSM is launching a reflection on this technology of the blockchain, because it could add an extra layer of safety on all of the flows that we administer in all the industries, so that'd be very complementary and would bring a lot of progress. Okay, Cédric, you've got the microphone, so we're going to continue with you. At the agricultural show with Terrena, the cooperative, you launched a platform which is supposed to federate the upstream, the cattle raisers and the agricultural producers, and to help us. The idea is to have the information at every stage to be able to to supply information from the hay fork to the consumer's fork. How are you going to trace traceability? What we announced it here a month ago with the cooperative Terrena. Terrena is 20 billion turnover. It's a very big West France cooperative, and it was the fruit of a meeting with the history of a company that wanted to do new agriculture, which is going to become a consumer brand, and they want to talk about a new way of producing. They want to talk about animal welfare, about CO2 footprint, about food, and to be able to tell this story with the right approach, they needed the means to create their data and to structure it and to share it. And that's where the relationship came about between us and Terrena. And so we created a platform, a collaborative platform, a traceability platform, because collaborative for us, collaboration is the only way to create traceability from one end to the other, from the haymaking fork to the food fork. And we have to. What do I mean by data? I want to talk about manufacturing data, and this means I've got to explain the standard. So, in fact, at every point in time of the life of a product, for example, for chicken, so we went into a batch of chickens, and they were identified, and I'm insisting on this identification because it's the only way that you can do traceability is to identify things. And there was a whole process from identifying this chicken, from the way it's hatched to where it's consumed, and there's a certain number of events, and we numerize the events, which means that where the little chickens in the hatching box, that's where the chickens are born. Every moment in the process, we create a numerical event. The product is identified in the farm of Mr. Dupont at a particular point in time, and in one of the stages in his process, which is the birth of the chickens. Then it gets into a lorry. It's put into a lorry. And that getting into the lorry creates another numerical incident. What, who, when, and why? Those are the 4 questions at each stage, and that's an international standard. And it's shared in databases. And on the whole of the flows, from the hatching box to getting into the lorry, then going to the farm, where through this process the producer tells his story about how he raises the chickens. Afterwards it goes into the plant, it's transformed, it's put into boxes and pallets. And at each stage we create what we call digital events. And it's just a history that we're writing. It's like the pages of a story. Along the whole of the chain, we create this data, which is available either in open data, and that's where the producer, who is the producer of the data, decides to post the data or not. The responsibility and the property belongs to the person that issues the data, and then you've got the data that you share with your partners, distributors, for example, and you share it at a level of a batch number, which means that every pack of chicken has from 2 batches have the same code in the cash desk, but there's 2 histories different, with a whole lot of events. The way it's been looked after, the way it's been nourished, etc., with the traceability along the whole chain for the incoming products, with all the traceability on the vaccinations that it's been received, for example. And this is just a little code on the products, and you have access to it because you're authenticated and authorized to access to this information.
And then you get the whole story of the product, the whole history of the product standardized. In digital events, there's a lot of process around audits. Audits are events with key events in the process, and this helps, is an evidence that brings back the trust from consumer, and it enables differentiation for the consumer, for the producer, because then he can tell the history of the hen growth and the way it was raised in different conditions. Yes, this is clearly a will to tell the story of a new agriculture, another agriculture that produces less but better, and we want to differentiate the French produce, because the French product the French chicken will always be of a different price than the Brazilian one, and also better because of the know-how. So we have this availability to share this knowledge with its partners, and at batch number, I insist, so it's very, very tuned level. So for businesses like Terena, they have made a general decision to transform the business. And Claire, you're one of the solutions of the business that will enable, and this will enable themselves to differentiate themselves and to also identify a retailer, which is also more expensive, that will tell something to consumers. But this enables to increase the value a bit more. And so in Fine, we have succeeded something. Claire, you too, in this, what are your answers to give power and to make your producers stronger? Well, today we're working on mobile solutions because we actually need not to just be at an industrial level. We want to be beyond. We want to work within our ecosystem, within our environment. So today we work on solutions that go beyond the walls of the business itself. So mobility. Yes, mobility. Before I mentioned that we worked on softwares, so on product information, also about the life of the product. So we feed our software today. Yes, thank you. So last question, maybe. I think it affects you all. Traceability. This is a very technical topic. Consumer needs to be reassured, as we said. What is the level of information that we need to give him to reassure him? Because this is the aim, but without flooding him with information. I know it's hard. I have a very simple idea. I think the consumer has the right to take his phone, scan a barcode on a product, and without needing to log or to have an identifier, to get the history of the whole product. I mean, all the elements from the origin of the produce, each ingredient, its process and transport until arriving to the store. I think some industrials tried this and changed their minds, because today technological solutions are complicated. We need equipment, so that's why all ranges look for solutions. In fine, this is the objective. This is the end objective, and today we have the technology that will enable us to do it. That's why we launched the pilots. So we really believe in giving the consumer a possibility of having open data. You will get the history on the product, the consumer will scan, and that's it. He will get it. And this full transparency will bring best practice, because you cannot lie to consumers indefinitely. I insisted on what you said, on the plug-and-play aspect. What we produce must be seen as invisible to the consumer, and he needs to have the information that he expects. And that's my personal opinion, but he needs to be told the just story, the truth, so that he knows which process the produce has followed. But then once brands decided to do this, this is very demanding, because the more you give consumers, the more they ask, and the more they'll share with their friends on social networks. So their levels of expectancies, of expectations also grows. So you have to really be well prepared. But if you are well prepared, you can really get a competitive plus. Claire, on the topic, yeah. Well, no, there's nothing else to add, I think. It's the fair, the just information. Yes, this is a complicated word. The enough information, but not too much. So it has to be balanced. Bruno, yes, to me, it makes different players accountable. And so we're on the same boat, and which is sailing towards the consumer, and the consumer wants more transparency. So if we sail all together towards the same objective, we'll improve. So we have to sit everyone around the table. This is what you all said beforehand. Well, I'd like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we can give them a hand. And now we can take 5 to 10 minutes for your questions in the room, so please don't hesitate. Our speakers are here. If you have questions on what was said, go ahead. Shoot. Maybe I see some shyness among the audience. Everything was clear? Yes, Béatrice, please launch the first question. I have understood that we need controllers, label controllers. We need controls and systems that control controls, and then controllers. I mean, that's a bit, we'll end up with this. No, you're right on this. When you start in this sector, you think, but where will it stop? Because some people look at how you work, some people check that you work well, and some people look, and then afterwards there are creditors, and then there's the government, the state. But in the end, it's consumers who are focused. And I can tell you, dear lady, that our concerns lead to aim at bringing the most reduced and the fairest, the most balanced level of control, given the risk into account. Because if you don't inform the consumer, the product will not be sold or not so well. Now, are you willing to pay 1 to 2% more for a product so that you have to get the whole story of the product? If you answer yes to that question, you are willing to accept that someone will control it. Thank you for this answer. Actually, I'd like to ask my question a bit differently. As a nutritionist, will be interested in toxicological scientific controls, much more for the consumer's health, whether he or she knows it or not. I'll give you an example. Through the consumer's client's department, some emergency room asked me whether the red beans were placed in a box by someone who wore latex gloves. I mean, you see how far it goes. So, it's a matter of public health. We need traceability. And then there's consumers. What does the consumer want to know, and what should we control with regards to his expectation? If we promise him that the green bean was picked at his grandma's garden, then he needs a certification that will tell him that yes, it was picked at his grandma's place. So some controls are more ethical and general, and then others are more medical or scientific or toxicological. Then we can't control everything. I mean, it's not necessarily interesting to know that this was planted by a guy who was certified and everything. But I mean, maybe we should distinguish all levels of control. Maybe not control just for the sake of it, but maybe the control aspect could be a public health aspect, and another one would be more ethically consumer-oriented. Well, you should ask this question to the people who rule us and who define the rules we will stand by, and the tolerance regarding to the molecule level. I mean, there's, in these countries we've mentioned pesticides, etc., all these products. To my viewpoint, no quality industrial doesn't try by different control programs to follow up all their products. We do microbiological tests, chemical tests, authenticity tests, I mean, all kinds of tests. Every time a crisis comes up, we add more tests, and they're actually based on risk analysis, and industrials do it without being asked. But, of course, restaurants are controlled every 14 days. We may regret it, but it's the truth. So how can we resolve that? Well, we try and launch actions among restaurant owners so that we can control a bit more restaurants, because they're actually very responsible for microbiological infection risks. Yes, but concerning restaurants, we may have surprise controls, and we may get a better control. But, as it was said, when you have an intestinal disorder, when you leave the restaurant, there's an application. You may declare it, and you may claim it, and then we'll find the centers of infection. So maybe some things can be set up to improve controls, because we know that controls in production plants can't. I mean, we can't do all the controls that we should do statistically. I'd like to answer your question by a famous quote: "Trust doesn't exclude control." But it has to do with the notion of trust. We need some controls. We could have many more, but I think the good level of control, the good level of expectation enables companies and businesses not to fall asleep and to always be alert. But, this control has to do with the brand. I've worked for years ago for Blenina, and I can tell you that a brand like Blenina concerning trust is the top of the top. It's for babies. It's baby products. So they really pay attention. They're so rigorous. And you know the brand well, right? So the rule concerning babies' food helps the products being of very good quality. And there's nothing more effective than anything that you put in your baby's mouth. And Bledina never said it. It's been going on for several decades. So I think that we should build trust based on these controls, based on these evidences, but especially thanks to the strength of brands. You see, Nestlé, they did a whole campaign. They took all TF1 spots, and Nestlé invites consumers to come to their plants so that they can make coffee, puree, and I think even with that. I mean, they're so strong in their speech to consumers that they invite consumers over to their plant. And this is really a trust, sincerity position. And this is all new. Nestlé just did it 3 weeks ago. Béatrice, God, you have so many questions. I'm sorry. Yes, Nestlé did it because recently TV wanted to visit Erta, and the communication manager of Nestlé said, no, it's too ugly, so let's not go and see it. So she's not at Nestlé anymore. Yes, she was thanked. She was replaced by a TV campaign saying, come and visit our plants. I mean, it was a reaction. Well, I don't want to speak about something I don't know. It was a journalist, Élise Lucet, who tries and look for things against the company, and the person wasn't well prepared to answer when it's something as relevant as this. Here, same thing. The words you use have such a weight. They are shown by media, by television, by networks. I think that Nestlé answered this because they want to counter this. They want to take the floor to counter this. Are there any other questions? No? Well, I just had one little question I wanted to ask, and it will be the last one. Traceability. Everything we've mentioned. I see expectations are many, and this has a cost. Traceability cost. Does it increase regularly, or I don't know who can answer? Maybe Bruno or Vincent. Well, we always think of the cost. It's very French, but I'd like to say what value for. Of course, it costs money to structure one's product's information. It costs money, but it's such a progress in the continuous improvement of the company. It creates so much value. It tells you about the way you produce, and virtual dimensions are great. So, of course, it requires money to hire auditors, but then it gives you a competitive benefit, and you should use it. Traceability is a very powerful means to create value on brands, on produce, and also to take market shares, and it's an investment in the end. Just a last example. One of my customers told me recently we equipped them with a traceability solution at store for labeling secondary dates, and they told us, thanks to this traceability solution on my products, I've saved so much in waste that this solution has repaid me for 10 years. So that's what we're talking about. Just to show the cheese with an alert message 1 or 2 days before the end of the date. And I'd like to wrap up with a funny anecdote. The Bank of France uses GSA standards for money and pallets. The person in charge of their warehouse came to us one day. They said, thank you, thanks to the right coding, I could place a pallet, and I didn't know where it was in a warehouse, and one pallet was 20 million euros. So you see the benefit with regards to the system? So he told us, thank you so much. I was able to find that pallet, and it was 20 million euros. It's just an extreme example, but it shows that the right traceability tools and the good system enables to follow up things. So yes, pallets of notes or whatever, it enables to get things back. Yes, and the benefits of traceability, we also see them in recalls, food crisis, we have to get ready for them. We can't avoid them because the supply chain is so complex. When you export to different countries, when you have good traceability, you'll be able to take fast decisions. You'll see how you can take the right decisions, and this is also very rewarding, and it enables to limit and also traceability. It's hard to identify because it's really cross-function in a company and on a value chain. Identifying what it means, is quite hard. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you all. And enjoy the fair, and see you tomorrow, maybe.